Today we're looking at operational efficiency. Session should last as usual around about 20 minutes-ish, so hopefully loads of time for you to grab a brew before your next call. Today we'll be covering things like the Find the Flaws audit that highlights improvement opportunities, how to build process that actually works, and ways to get people on board without bringing in the dreaded ops police, and also ops metrics that really matter. Before we jump in, as usual, just a bit of housekeeping for those who don't know me or Kate or haven't joined on previous webinars. I'm Steve, I'm one of the co-founders here at Agency Works. Been working with agencies for well over 23, 24 years now. And as usual, I am delighted today in particular because she's just dropped off and come back again to be joined officially by Kate, who's a principal consultant here at Agency Works, but is also somebody who has had lots of previous experience working at agencies in operation roles. So as usual, and particularly today, I'm excited to hear your insights. So thanks for joining, Kate.
Thanks, Steve.
Always.
So we tend to find that people fall into sort of ops managers roles from all different sides of the business and end up wearing lots of different hats. And with that comes lots of different problems. But today we're talking specifically about improving your workflows. But before we jump into those frameworks, let me set the scene a bit. As someone who's spent years as an ops manager at agencies, I think it's one of the hardest jobs in the business. You're the person everyone comes to when things go wrong. You're expected to make creative chaos feel organised, know when projects are on track or overrunning, and work with the resources you have, not the resources you necessarily wish you had, and somehow make everyone happy. Now, workflows can be one of the biggest drains in agencies. Maybe they aren't working properly, just not being followed, or maybe they aren't in place at all. And you'll find that most workflow problems hide in plain sight. Teams tend to adapt to inefficiencies until they become completely invisible. Maybe someone takes a longer route to get approval because that's just how so-and-so likes it, or a handoff gets delayed because the brief isn't quite right. But maybe that's just because your template isn't supporting the brief well enough. And I'm sure you've heard some, if not all of the excuses on the screen at the moment. It is a bit like excuse bingo. It's a good one. But these little adaptations compound into major inefficiencies over time. And this all begs the very important question, do you know what's actually happening in your workflows right now? And I don't mean what you think is happening or what's written in a tidy process doc from 2 years ago. I mean what's actually happening day to day when your team is under pressure, deadlines are tight, and people are just trying to get things out of the door. Because here's the truth, workflows have a way of drifting. A process might have started out clean, but over time, people find workarounds and they take shortcuts. They add extra steps that feel helpful in the moment. And before you know it, the real workflow looks nothing like the official version. And you need to conduct a Find the Flaws workflow audit.
Yeah, so what does that mean? So you can't fix chaos until you understand it. So before you start streamlining or automating anything, you need to actually understand how your agency's workflows today, not how it should work on paper, but what do people really do to get stuff over the line. So that's where the Find the Flaws audit comes in. It's a quick but powerful 3-step method to uncover where the real inefficiencies, duplication, and head-banging moments live. So here's our Find the Flaws 3-step audit guide. First thing we need to do is map the current state. So forget the polished flowchart that somebody made 18 months ago. You're not documenting ideal process here. You're tracking the lived experience of a job as it moves through your agency. So how do we do that? The first thing we'd recommend is shadowing a real project from start to finish, or looking at one that's already been completed. Talk to the team at every stage, but ask questions like, how long does the work take that usually sits in this step? What are you usually waiting for here? Do you have to make up your own processes? And remember, don't just ask team leaders, Get input from project managers, account execs, designers, finance, as the problems often sit where the handovers happen. So start where friction is already suspected. Jobs that stall in creative review, finance delays on PO matching, or clients that always need just one more round. Next, we now need to identify the time sink. So now that you follow the job through the system, it's time to dig into why it moves so slowly. And it's usually not through a lack of effort, it's a lack of clarity or often a lack of structure. So look for work sitting idle, waiting for sign-off, feedback, or information. Repeated questions or duplicate tasks. So, can we resend the brief? Decisions made, reversed, and remade because of poor visibility or unclear ownership. So ask, what creates the most back and forth? What do you keep chasing? What do people just do themselves because it's taking too long? So this is where you'll find the invisible time drains that slowly kill momentum across all your projects. Then, not every inefficiency is about time. Some of it's about wasted energy, duplicate effort, and miscommunication. So you might have two people doing the same research because they didn't know the other had done it, or endless meetings because someone was left off a thread or a key decision. Or you might have extra rounds of revisions because the brief wasn't clear or maybe kept changing. So where do people feel most frustrated? What's something that should be simple but never is? When do you feel like we're reinventing the wheel? But frustration here is your friend, as it usually points directly to the pain points worth fixing. Then we need to prioritize. So once you've gathered the insights, don't try to fix everything at once. Instead, focus on high impact and high frequency flaws, the bottlenecks that affect most jobs most often. Quick wins with willing teams. So fixing processes that already have internal buy-in will help you build momentum. And then from a client-facing chaos, workflow issues in client comms or approvals often have a bigger impact on timelines and morale. So for example, we found in one agency that every client job was stalled by 3 days, just waiting for account managers to approve POs. Not because they were being slow, but because no one had told them that they could delegate that task. So one 15-minute fix saved hours per week. So you don't need to overhaul your whole agency overnight. Start with one process, one team, one fix, and let the results do the talking. So if your team is saying, we've always done it that way, it's probably worth asking, should you?
It's a really thorough audit flow there, Steve.
Lots of information there.
Indeed. So now you know what needs fixing, you can look at designing workflows that actually work. The biggest mistake I see in designing workflows for a fantasy world where everything goes according to plan. Everyone remembers to do every step exactly right and exactly the right time with perfect information. But as we know, that's just not how agencies work. So this means three things. First, build in flexibility for creative process. So creative work doesn't follow like a linear path. Sometimes you need to jump back to strategy after you've seen the creative. Sometimes the best idea comes at 4 p.m. on a Friday. Your processes need to have sort of a contingency to accommodate that, not fight it. Second, make the right choice the easy choice. Don't over-engineer a simple process. If something works with a quick conversation, you don't need to build a complex workflow around it. And think the path of least resistance should lead through your process. And try to streamline the lines of communication whilst taking into account how your teams prefer to work. Third, design for interruptions. Agencies are interrupt-driven environments. Your workflows need to handle urgent requests, changing priorities, and incomplete information. Build that flexibility in from the start. The goal isn't to create the most elegant process, it's to create the process that actually gets used.
So how do you do that? And there is a saying, because if it doesn't stick, it won't stick around. So designing a process is one thing. As Kate said, getting people to actually use it, that's the real challenge. So if you've ever launched a beautiful new workflow only for it to be ignored within a week, this is why. It wasn't sticky. It wasn't embedded properly. So here are 4 essential elements that will hopefully make your new workflow actually stick. So the first one, when does this process officially start? This is the clear trigger. Not vague, not wishy-washy starting points like when we get the brief or when somebody emails the creative team. We need to be brutally specific. When the brief is approved by the account director and includes client sign-off and budget parameters, and the project code is created in Synergist. So the more precise the trigger, the less room for confusion, delays, or jobs floating in limbo. And it matters, as if people don't know when they're supposed to kick something off, they'll either start too early and miss vital information, or too late and miss the deadline. Next, we need to look at defined outcomes. So what does done look like? And actually, who decides that? So it's not when the work is finished, but when the creative director has approved the concept, and it includes final production specs and is ready for client presentation. So avoid subjective endpoints like when the work is good or when it feels done. That's a breeding ground for scope creep, endless revisions, and hallway approvals. Because if people don't know where the finish line is, they'll keep running, or worse, stop too soon and hand over something that's incomplete. Next up, we've got the checkpoints. So how do we know if the process is veering off track before it fully crashes? Checkpoints are your early warning signs. So they're not micromanagement, they're course correction. So an example might be, this step normally takes 2 days. If it's day 4 and it's still in progress, that's a flag. We usually get 2 rounds of feedback. If we're on round 5, let's pause and review what's broken. Also, we need to add a check-in logic to your systems. And these could be time-based triggers, volume-based triggers, or even human checkpoints. So the project manager reviewing progress midway through the project. Because most breakdowns don't happen suddenly, they creep in. So checkpoints help you spot drift before it becomes a disaster. And then finally, immediate benefits. What do people get from following the process and how fast do they get it? So we all want to play by the rules if there is something in it for us. So your process needs to offer a win, and that win needs to show up quickly. So examples that might be, there's less back and forth. So clearer briefs equal fewer quick questions. Faster approvals because stakeholders were looped in earlier. Fewer surprises. I didn't know we needed a quote for that. Or maybe tighter timelines. So less wasted time chasing people for missing information. So if your process only pays off eventually, people will default to shortcuts in the meantime. And we know that adoption rises when people feel a benefit personally. To make sure your workflow doesn't just serve the agency, it's serving the team that are using it. So a sticky workflow isn't complicated, it's clear. It has a defined starting point, clear outcomes, smart checkpoints, and it makes life easier and faster. So people don't resist process, they resist pointless process.
Some great tricks there, Steve, and I loved the Henry Ford quote. I
Yeah,
feel like
all
that's
that
something we
quote.
should have up on the wall.
Mm.
So now you've designed a great workflow. That's awesome. But now comes the really hard part, getting people to actually use it without becoming the ops police, which no one wants to do. So here's the thing about process adoption. It's not about compliance, it's about psychology. People don't resist new processes because they're lazy or difficult. They resist them because they're afraid of change. And change moves them from a place out of control where they know exactly how things work to the unknown. Even if the current way is inefficient, it's familiar. Your job is to address those fears before they become resistant, and you do that by using change management best practices.
So how do you do that, Kate? I hear you asking. Well,
Yeah.
here are 4 steps for you to consider. So the first one is find your process evangelists. So there's always someone who's been complaining about how chaotic things are. Trying to convert skeptics first will waste energy and definitely create resistance. Early adopters become your proof of concept. Nothing reinforces a process like a peer saying, this actually made my life easier. Step 2, communicate the vision clearly. So don't just tell people what to do differently. Paint a picture of their day when the workflow actually works. And be specific about how their job gets easier, faster, or maybe less frustrating. Step 3, empower action. Give people what they need to succeed. That could be proper training, time to learn the new way, or maybe access to the right tools. And here's the key. Take away the ability to go back to the old ways. If your new process is optional, people will default to what they know. So make the new way the only way that makes sense. And then finally, create positive feedback loops. So when the process works, make sure we celebrate it. When it saves time, acknowledge it. And when it prevents a problem, point it out. Make success visible. And if you follow these steps, you'll transform resistance into enthusiasm, and people will start asking for your process instead of ignoring them. Okay, so these are now looking at ops metrics. So finally, we're talking about measuring success. The key to improving operations is tracking the right things, tracking metrics that actually help you make better decisions. And we've picked out 3 to focus on here that measure operational efficiency.
So the first one would be flow efficiency. So this is how smoothly work moves through your agency, and have the following metrics improved. So things like average time between handoffs, estimated versus actuals for both time and third-party costs, and improved on-time delivery rates. Hopefully everything is getting out of the door on time, looking awesome.
And then you've got process effectiveness, so whether your workflows are actually working. And that could be things like revisions per round of project, your process adoption rate, or maybe just the rework error rate reduction.
And then we're looking at people impact. So whether changes are helping or hindering your team. So this would be things like team satisfaction with workflow. So talk to your team, find out what is working, and address any roadblocks sooner rather than later. And client satisfaction with your service. So talk to your account management teams and get their feedback. And the all-important utilization rates. So these should improve as your resource teams are having more time to deliver the work rather than questioning briefs or warding off those "can you just" requests. So track these regularly and you'll have a clear picture of whether your audit insights, your process improvements, and your change management efforts are actually delivering results. These metrics close the loop and they tell you if the work is actually paying off.
Okay, so we've covered quite a bit in the 20 minutes or so, lot to take away. So as usual, we'll hopefully leave you with our kind of key 3 takeaways that we've touched on. For me, the first one would be kind of hidden inefficiency. So most of your workflow problems, as we said previously, are hiding in plain sight. So teams adapt to inefficiencies until they become invisible. So a systematic audit will reveal hopefully opportunities that you didn't know existed, and small improvements can compound into major efficiency gains.
And design for reality. So workflows that work are built around how people actually behave. The right choice should always be the easy choice. Flexibility always beats rigid processes every time.
And then finally, psychology, not policy. People resist processes that feel like surveillance or bureaucracy. Success comes from making processes feel helpful, not mandatory. Early wins and willing participants create momentum for a wider adoption too. The bottom line is great operations aren't about perfect processes. They're about processes that will actually get used across your team. Okay, just promised, just after 20 odd minutes here, that brings us to the end of today's webinar. Hopefully you found it useful. As usual, we'll send across a copy of the recording today for those people who haven't been able to attend live, if you want to share it with members of your team. If you didn't have any questions, do feel free to reach out or connect with us on LinkedIn. If you like today's session, then you might be interested in the next in our Agency Masters webinar, which is titled Client Kickoffs That Click, and we'll be delivering that on Wednesday, the 1st of, can't believe I'm saying this, October, where it is. You also might have seen that we have a YouTube channel, so if you want to go back and look at any of our previous webinars or our popular A-game series, they're all on our YouTube channel. So if you've got 20 minutes or free or so, go and watch those. If you want more insight in terms of agency life or tips or hacks, then do visit our website, agencyworks.co.uk, where there's plenty more insight available too. But thanks ever so much for joining us. Thanks, Kate, for joining us and for rejoining me after your little glitch at the session.
I'd never leave you high and dry, Steve.
Thanks ever so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Okay, cheers. Bye.
Cheers.